Now, the results of this study should not surprise any of us, given the amount of evidence that we have that suggests that promiscuity is a malignancy on society, destroys families, destroys marriages, destroys children's lives, etc. We can even just point to the Bible in the wisdom that contained within the text itself of the ills of lust and gooning and everything else. I mean, look no further than the examples of Samson and Delilah, or even King Solomon, or even King David, in the punishment and the judgment was put on him after his, uh, uh, stint of adultery. But let's get into it. Get into this, because this was also pretty mind blowing, even for me to read a number of years ago. And I have to give a huge shout out to my brother Will Noland, who put together kind of like the footnotes, the summary of this study. And although the conclusion points to something that we already knew and already know, and kind of reinforces the half of the point of why I even started this channel, it's still important for us to know and lay out these facts. So this was a study done by J.D. Unwin. He's a secular liberal that wanted to find that there was no correlation between sexual decadence and promiscuity and the fall of civilization. But instead, he found the exact opposite, that he found that the cultures and the societies with the most energy, the ones that provided the most strength generation after generation, were absolutely monogamous, and the ones that enjoyed the most sexual decadence were the ones that had the quickest downfall. And I think here in the West, I think globally, we're seeing this rapid decline due in part to this massive, massive problem. So let's get into it. So, because you guys know I'm a fan of technology, I've got a piece of paper with all the summaries here, or the summary here. So let's get into this. This study of the rise and fall of 80 societies predicts collapse around 2060. Unwin, a secular liberal, set out to prove that sexual morality had no connection to cultural advancement, and he found the opposite. Sexual liberation isn't progress, it's regression. Within 100 years, abandoning prenuptial chastity leads to abandoning deism, rational thinking, and absolute monogamy. Unwin studied 80 societies and found that any human society is free to choose. It can display great energy, or it can enjoy sexual freedom, but it cannot do both for more than one generation. The sexual behavior of women before marriage is a decisive factor in cultural success. Feminists hate to hear that one. Men are mainly motivated by sex, and if they can get it without marriage, they contribute less to society. So if you can get the milk without the cow, so to speak, why even bother with marriage? Prenuptial chastity coupled with absolute monogamy energizes cultures the most. Cultures that sustain this for 3 generations exceeded all other cultures in every area. Only the world's greatest empires managed it: the Athenians, the Romans, and the British. Embracing total sexual freedom produces an inert culture. People focus only on their own wants and needs. Such cultures are conquered by others with greater social energy. Unwin's study shows sexual freedom cannot have its full cultural effect for 100 years. A generation can live off the energy generated by the previous monogamous one, but it won't pass energy on to the 3rd generation. The sexual revolution of 1960 gives us until 2060. Before Rome fell, women were emancipated, marriages fell out of fashion, Roman gravitas disappeared, sexual opportunity was extended, marital and parental authorities were qualified, and then absolutely monogamous Teutons conquered Rome. If a rationalistic society loosens its sexual restrictions, it regresses to superstition and irrationality. As Unwin predicted, we are seeing irrationality, nature worship, women identifying as witches. Unwin explodes the quaint and comfortable doctrine that the cultural process is a progressive development. Sexual constraints mean flourishing. Sexual freedom means collapse. Without this truth, we shall understand neither our own culture nor that of any society. And I quote J.D. Unwin again: sometimes a man has been heard to declare that he wishes both to enjoy the advantages of high culture and to abolish compulsory continence. The reformer may be likened to the foolish boy who desires both to keep his cake and to consume it. So this was mind-blowing. But as we know in the book of Ecclesiastes, one of my favorite books in the Bible in general, there is nothing new under the sun. Everything is vanity of vanity and a chasing after the wind. Wise words from King Solomon that we should all, especially as men, study, and that this shouldn't surprise us. I mean, look at the sexual depravity of Sodom and Gomorrah and the judgment that faced them. And I think that we are going to face a greater judgment, that this is part of a bit of a chastisement. And unless we have the true wisdom and discernment from God to be able to see through this and to reintegrate chastity back into culture, and I think that starts with men, although this study showed that women being what did the quote actually say? That sexual behavior of women before marriage is a decisive factor in cultural success. Yes, I mean, I think there has been so much blame shifting where, men carry 100% of the burden. And although I still maintain that men do carry most of the burden, just given, that the fact that we are supposed to be leaders of society in culture, that women aren't called to teach, men are called to teach, and heavy is the head that wears the crown. We are the first fruits of God's creation. And as a result, there are some, if you want to call them, unfair responsibilities bestowed unto us that we need to be able to bear this kind of suffering. So I do believe that if let's just pretend for a second that if men decided to practice chastity, which is essentially, according to the church, the integration of sexuality into one's personhood, and so valuing marriage and waiting until marriage, that a lot of women would follow suit. Now, that's not to say that women shaming other women to do this is not also effective. It's incredibly effective. We need more of that. We need the culture to shift where there is some shame around being promiscuous. There is a shame about having X amount of partners outside of marriage. This also applies to men too, is that we can't just, and this is what I think is so depraved about the red pill, is that it's akin to spitting in the air and complaining that it lands right on your forehead. What I mean by that is so many guys want to complain about hoes, but then they go out and they're homemakers. So they're going out and creating and facilitating and perpetuating the problem that they complain about. So guys, if you want actual lasting change, as the cheesy saying goes, the change starts with each one of us, resembling St. Joseph and his chastity, his devotion to Jesus, his devotion to his wife, the Blessed Mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary. And if enough men did this, the culture would shift. But instead, we have a culture that I think is the minority, or men that are fighting for Christendom in this culture war of, trying to maintain their chastity, trying to, raise virtuous families. And although I think the pendulum is swinging, there's a lot more work to be done. And then you have this large demographic of men that want to just, okay, well, the world is declining. Let's just enjoy the decline. Well, in enjoying the decline, you become the decline. And so we often forget that we are planting seeds for the next generation. And although we may not sit under the shade of that tree, the tree is still worth planting. That is what got us here in the first place. Our forefathers being chased, our forefathers fighting in wars against, rival cultures that are seeking to take over. And we stand firmly on their shoulders, and instead we're squandering this opportunity instead of trying to re-energize the culture in the generations to come. We're so focused on ourselves. This is why I'm on a crusade to tell guys to stop gooning, okay? Whether that means watching pornography, whether that means being promiscuous. It's like, guys, listen, all that falls from that is your own eternal death, potentially. When God calls you, if that stain of mortal sin is on your conscience, guess where you're going? And I firmly believe that the majority of us, even people that call themselves practicing Christians, are going to inherit hellfire. Okay? Well, before the world falls into absolute chaos, which it is in a rapid fashion right now, we are able to turn the tide. I know this seems rich coming from a guy that was formerly all of these things that I'm talking about right now, but I have been delivered and I have been transformed by the blood of Jesus Christ, and transformed by the sacraments themselves. So look at my previous life as a cautionary tale. I don't deserve anything that I have. I mean, nobody really deserves what they have. I have a beautiful wife, a beautiful family, a well-ordered home, and Jesus in our hearts, in our home, etc. I don't deserve this, but look at my history as a sort of a cautionary tale. I did all these things, and what happened to me? I fell into further and further and further chaos, doom and gloom in my own soul and my own heart. And for whatever reason, I was given another opportunity. Guys, this is your reminder that you can actually change the tide. And this is why I hammer home on this topic all the time, is that the modern crusade is not fought with swords and scimitars. The modern crusade is fought in maintaining the ecclesiola, the little church of our own homes, in taking our families to mass, participating in the sacrament as a whole, catechizing them daily, having them witness you pray, you praying over them, you maintaining your state of grace, you maintaining your chastity. Because yes, chastity also is involved in a healthy marriage. When your wife is pregnant, during that last trimester when she's recovering, etc., there's going to have to be a period where you're able to control your carnal desires. And like I said in my last video, subordinating that lower appetite to our intellects, because ultimately our intellect and our will, when we're paying attention, we've maintained our state of grace, point toward the ultimate good, which is God. But when we listen so much to our lower appetites, our lower faculties, and we put second things first and first things second, it becomes disordered. We forget the actual end of a thing, which sex is about procreation and, of course, of enjoyment, but it can't be fractured from the ultimate end, which is creating life. So when we are treating other people like they're simply just like tools, means to an end in this way, we should not be surprised to see that culture and society follows suit, that marriage falls out of fashion. Women seem to think that this is part of their own liberation. And so the color revolution, the sexual revolution of the 60s that kind of coincided with feminism and everything else, this was a deliberate attack on the family. And remember, Our Lady of Fatima warned us that the final bastion, the final battle would be between Satan and the family. Because why? The family is a living, breathing representation of the Trinity, and a man and woman is a living, breathing representation of Christ and his church. And so the only way we bring back the glory of Christendom in not just the West, but in the world at large, is for more men to take their chastity seriously, for more women to take their chastity seriously, for men to understand that their ultimate goal, if they're not, part of the clergy, is to be a patriarch, a loving patriarch that passes on the faith to their children, and to a woman to be an obedient and wonderful and beautiful example of Mother Mary in the home, and raising their children to love the Lord and love the Blessed Virgin Mary, to raise them with virtue. This is how we continue this energy from generation to generation. We restore the world for Christendom. Now, obviously, God doesn't need our help, but that doesn't mean we just opt out. We don't ride the wave down. We try to rebuild. That is the new crusade. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, this study was mind-blowing, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And for those of you that are struggling with lust, your fitness, etc., this is what I do. I'm a coach. I'm going to leave my description or my link in the description below. Appreciate it. God bless you guys.